90s March Madness was a lot of fun, but I think it's time we went back to our regularly scheduled program, if you ask me. And what better way to get ourselves back into order than with a Patreon request. This one comes from Jordan Ogle, with his ongoing membership over my Patreon page, who's able to get a flick of his choice covered right here on the program, and for future episodes as well. I would not like to thank him, but also for the pick he provided for today. It's one that I haven't seen, nor that I've heard of up until now, but it made for an interesting watch. And believe me, there's a lot of stuff I want to talk about. More good than bad. So with that, thank you. If you have a flick of your own that you'd like to see covered right here on the show, go over to my Patreon page, make a donation. And for free and paid members, they are able to select some future titles over on a couple of polls on Patreon available to free and paid members. Though I do have something special planned for the next 3 episodes that I'll talk about a little later on, so it might be a little bit until I have another poll active. But either way, you'll also get access to episodes way, way in advance, so be that as it may. With that said, let's begin.
This token can unlock a fantasy you'll never forget. With this token, you can live a dream and be what you want to be in the game room at Connecticut Golfland. With the drop of this token, you can travel the universe, race the Grand Prix, or play for the New York Yankees.
I want my MTV.
I want my MTV. I want my MTV.
I think the best way to describe Streets of Fire is clearly in the opening scene. It's fueled by both emotion and music. We see these quick cuts between a city named Richmond, that looks like a mesh between the 1940s and the 1980s, people lining up for some big rock concert led by Ellen Aim and the Attackers. The atmosphere is energetic. Wait, what is this biker gang doing? Are they here to cause trouble? Or see the concert? And why does the leader of that group look so familiar? Oh my god, it's Willem Dafoe! No! And he just takes her with the whole place turning to a pure riot? Did the leader of the punk band Fear deck one into Bill Paxton's stomach? And before you can ask anything else, all hell breaks loose. There's car crashes, motorcycles slide, people are dragged from behind, shop windows are smashed, and everyone is in a pure panic. The only thing missing to make this more exhilarating is something bonkers, like Godzilla showing up and doing a tap dance in the Empire State Building, or an explosion of pop rock set off by a Coca-Cola grenade. And this is only the first 8 minutes of the movie. It's pure, energized, insane, enthralling, and grabs your attention. A sequence itself that's overshadowed by the remainder of the movie. The plot centers on an ex-soldier named Tom Cody who was called in to retrieve her. Trouble is, Ellie turns out to be an ex-girlfriend of his. So he starts to become uncertain if he wants to save a past lover, but then he has a change of heart. Later on, he starts to become uncertain if he still holds feelings for her, but still attempts to break her out of the clutches of a biker gang led by Raven. The plot is really not that deep or anything specific. You can just take any of these elements and tropes, boil them all down, and apply them to any film in any other genre. A a western or a fantasy per se that involves a knight going off to battle the dragon and save the princess. You get the idea. And this was the intention of director Walter Hill, as he wanted to play the movie off as more of an adolescent fantasy and less of a story strung together by a bunch of tropes and cliches. You have the reluctant hero, the bad guy who wants the beauty and defeat the good guy, some comic relief, and some colorful townsfolk. Streets of Fire is really built on scenes and less on plot. But hey, it worked for movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark. George Lucas and Steven Spielberg thought, wouldn't it be cool to see this stunt or that on the big screen and tie it all to a plot? Here, it's more a case of hitting the beats of what young audiences wanted to see on the big screen. Love triangles, rock and roll music, explosions, a love interest you want to crush over, a tough-as-nails girl that you feel is more your speed. It seems to be leaning more towards that is what adolescents would love to see, as opposed to making a unique narrative out of it. Even the characters are pretty basic on paper. The only thing that saves them from feeling generic in one note are the performances. It's like the cast got the idea of how they were going to play these roles and amped them to 11. Michael Paré is Tom Cody, an ex-soldier for hire. Paré really channels the tough rebel mood and works well going against the intimidation of rebellious gangs and stern cops. This guy was born to be in an action movie and does the job well. And yeah, they play with the whole does he still love the ex or not motif, but I think they communicate it well. The story just seems to tease with it a little too much when we the audience know what his choice will be. Diane Lane is the kidnapped Ellen Aim and fits the damsel in distress role, but there's nothing really that intriguing. Of course, she gets saved midway through the movie, but then they play around with the notion if she wants to continue life as a rock star or give Tom a second chance. I will give the filmmakers credit for trying to make her more than just some trophy girl, but even that causes the second half of the movie to drag, as she contemplates whether she wants to be with Tom or continue her career with some jerk as her manager. The other girl involved is also an ex-soldier named McCoy, played by Amy Madigan. I do like how Tom sees her as a help for hire and not just some romantic fling. Of course, she is going to be more interesting than the rock star they save, and clearly her and Tom have chemistry, but they don't want to go for each other. Still, I like Madigan's tough attitude and her appearance already. She clearly shows she's been through some stuff and doesn't make any easy judgments. She's the kind of person that would love to slug one on a Saturday night, as opposed to going out and picking up dates. I kinda like that. But the real scene stealer in my books is Rick Moranis as Billy Fish, Ellen's new boyfriend and manager. He's the real reason to see this movie. Every moment Fish is on screen, you can't help but laugh at how overly jerky he is.
I want 10 grand.
Easy. All you gotta do is earn it.
Just take a big bite. That's right. Like to see there's some integrity left in the force.
Okay, Cody, what's the plan? How do you figure on handling all these guys and their motorcycles? You start killing bombers, we're gonna be in worse shape than we're already in.
It's interesting to note how Rick Moranis got his shot to stardom for playing lovable nerds and scientists. Here, it's the polar opposite as he tries to sound and act tough as our lead. But hearing him read these lines in a tough attitude, and coming out of the body of someone who looks very meek and geek-like, makes something that's both unintentional and intentionally entertaining. Just to see this geeky-looking guy think he's big stuff just because he's rich and dating a beautiful girl at his side, it's actually pretty funny. It's like if Seymour Krelborn from Little Shop of Horrors got a stick shoved up his pipe so far that it left him permanently moody. Willem Dafoe is the biker gang leader, Raven. Just a traditional baddie and nothing more. Willem is a great character actor, and that's a major testament to how incredible he can be. He looks the role of a villain, but here, he doesn't get to do too much. Sure, he does feel intimidating to our hero and looks twisted. However, outside the opening kidnap and the big sledgehammer fight at the end, Raven is left as more of an obstacle than a fully developed character. It's a shame because you can see Willem is really putting his all into this performance, but I want to remember the character more than just his performance. The same can be said for Lee Ving, who acts as a secondary lackey, and I've seen Ving act before in movies like Clue, so I know he can be good. At least he's having the time of his life playing a henchman, and goes completely AWOL when he's given the chance. I can handle the paper-thin plotline and the simplicity of the characters, but here's my biggest gripe. Once the rescue goes underway, and surprisingly without a hitch, Streets of Fire starts to run out of gas. With 50 minutes of the movie remaining, you really feel the storytellers are scrambling to find something to work with, like trying to race back home, a three-way love triangle, or a showdown with Raven. After the rescue, it feels like there's nowhere to go, and the momentum sags a little. They even have them bump into other characters like a fan of Ellen played by E.G. Daly, and a doo-wop group called the Sorrells.
Remember when you didn't love me? Now all the time you're thinking of me.
They're cool and interesting, but not the focus. If anything, they exist for a small bit of comic relief, or just to at least have a small payoff at the end. As mentioned, there's a whole subplot where Tom is unsure of his feelings for Ellen, and meanwhile his ex-girlfriend keeps questioning if she should continue her music career. This could make for some interesting material, but doesn't help when the viewer can predict what will happen miles away before its eventual conclusion. So, if the story and the characters are nothing really that special, why does Streets of Fire have this cult following? As hinted earlier, I feel it boils down to two things. It's a movie fueled by emotion and music. These are images and things we want to see at a young age. A movie with excitement and good song. You could argue this feels like the fantasy a teenager would come up with. The will to be this tough guy going to save someone they love, and surrounded in a world fueled by rock and roll. Even the look of this movie feels like a mix between a stylish music video and one of those classic 1950s biker films, like Blackboard Jungle. It's a clear case of style over substance, which is not a bad thing. If you're looking for escapism, this is it. But if you're looking for something with deeper meaning, seek elsewhere. This is the kind of movie you put on if it's a rainy day or a quiet Saturday night and just let your mind wander. You enjoy seeing the good guy win over the bad guy because of the circumstances. You cry when one character makes a decision that you don't want them to see. You want to see the girl end up with the hero, but no, it might not be possible. It's telling your emotions how you should feel in the moment, without feeling manipulated. I do feel like this is missing from a lot of today's movies. We used to build things on foundations of mood and escapism. Now, everything has to have a purpose, or there needs to be some science and reasoning. Movies can be an art form and a fun ride, but it all boils down to taste. But there's a bigger bonus here with Streets of Fire, and that is the music. Nowhere Fast, I Can Dream About You, Tonight Is What It Means to Be Young. This soundtrack is stacked with really good songs. Even if you never saw the movie, odds are you probably heard of one or two of them on the radio at some point. Each one adds a musical quality to it and adds to the tone of the scene really well. They are hummable and certainly unforgettable. The best way to describe how they matter to the movie lies in discussing one of my favorite scenes. We see Raven and his gang's hideout is in this club called Torchy's. In any western, this would be the standard sleazy villain hideout. But this place is elevated by the presence of the Blasters, who perform a cover of One Bad Stud in Blue Shadows. There's beer everywhere, the band is enlightening the mood, and meanwhile, Marine Jahan is doing this frantic striptease on the counter. There's just so much going on, and you feel this high energy in the place due to the music and visuals. They both complement each other really well. And well, I can't show too much of Marine's dance. Two things. For a PG-rated movie released a mere couple of weeks before PG-13 was invented, fishnets don't hide everything. And I gotta admit, this place has way more class than Jabba's palace in Return of the Jedi. Hey, at least at Torchy's, sultry dancers not being fed to a giant monster under the floorboards. Considering the mismatch of different stuff, it's no wonder Streets of Fire wasn't a box office hit on debut. It went up against highly anticipated blockbusters like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Ghostbusters, Gremlins, and Star Trek III to name a few. According to the filmmakers, a new regime at Universal Studios came in, had zero faith in the project, didn't advertise it enough, and treated the release more akin to a B picture as opposed to an A-list summer flick. Walter Hill said he planned to make a trilogy out of it, but nothing came because of the poor performance. There was an unofficial sequel made by Albert Pune called Road to Hell, but most of it feels like a rehash of the first movie, on an extremely low shoestring budget. Streets of Fire would be a bigger hit thanks to home video, its soundtrack, and even bigger success internationally in Europe and Asia. Most notable was in Japan, where audiences resonated with the story elements that of a samurai take, given the hero comes in,
does his work, and heads out to another town.
Supposedly, Streets of Fire was so popular in Japan that it became the influence for a lot of beat-em-up games in the late 1980s. Video games, that is. One notable example that some have pointed to is a lot of eerie and unique similarities between Capcom's Final Fight, though in 2007, said video games developer Akira Nishitani went as far to say something to the extent of, "Oh, I didn't know that movie exists until one internet search later." Yeah, I guess there are some interesting connections and similarities between the two. And with all due respect, Nishitani does have a point. There was a lot of video games at the time that had some similar ideas of saving this person or fighting a bunch of people just to get some big goal or trophy at the end. Double Dragon. Need I say more?
In conclusion, Streets of Fire is an interesting piece of 1980s pop culture that emulates the trends of the time of youth culture. It's a movie that seems to base itself off what folks wanted to see, and less about trying to be something. Tough heroes, greasy bad guys, rock and roll, you get the gist. I respect the cast and crew for having fun with this movie, and they really put a lot of effort. However, if the story and characters were developed a little better, maybe I wouldn't feel so harsh on this one. It's far from a masterpiece, but it's good entertainment, and that's all I need to know. Final verdict? Invite some friends over, play this on the biggest screen and loudest speakers you got, order some Chinese food, and double bill this with Highlander. Trust me, you won't regret it.
Sometimes you don't need a movie to have deep plot or deep characters just to be entertaining. Once in a while, you need a little escapism. And no matter what my opinion is, I truly say that this movie is one you should see. Cut.
Every director wishes that every film were a hit and that that it had reached a very large audience. But if I had to do again, I'd make the movie in a minute. Knowing what I do now, I guess I'd probably be able to make it a little better, but it would be essentially what it is.
Speaking of escapism, tune in next time as in honor of Easter, we're doing the Star Trek trilogy. Later!
Somewhere in the darkest reaches of the universe, a battle is about to begin. A battle between good and evil, between a warrior and a madman. A battle that will take you from the end of time to the beginning of creation. A battle between the awesome power of the Starship Enterprise and the Wrath of Khan. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Rated PG.
Now showing at a theater near you.